It is my view that the deceitful way the interview was obtained substantially influenced what my mother said. The interview was a major contribution.
Decades after Princess Diana's tragic death, her influence remains unshakable, casting a long shadow over the British monarchy. When Prince William took a bold stand to protect his mother's legacy, the royal family found itself facing an uncomfortable reckoning. His statement, unexpected yet powerful, cut through years of carefully maintained royal decorum, making it clear that Diana had been deceived, manipulated, and ultimately harmed by the circumstances leading to her infamous interview. More than just setting the record straight, it was about ensuring that his mother's voice, silenced too soon, was heard once again. The reaction within Buckingham Palace was immediate. Shock turned into whispers, whispers into gasps, and then silence. It was a rare moment when history's weight pressed down on the royal family, forcing them to confront a past that refused to remain buried. No one felt the impact of William's words more than Queen Camilla. Sources inside the palace described her as visibly shaken, retreating into her private chambers as the realization set in that, despite all the years that had passed, Diana's presence remained as powerful as ever. Having spent years rebuilding her public image, trying to step out of the shadow that had followed her since the days of Diana, Camilla now found herself at the center of renewed scrutiny. Her relationship with William, long defined by quiet formality rather than warmth, now faced a deeper strain. As the press dissected William's statement, social media erupted with praise for the prince's courage, seeing him as his mother's son, unafraid to challenge the very institution that had once failed her. For King Charles, the moment was delicate. As monarch, his priority was the stability of the crown, but as a husband, he could not ignore the pain his wife was enduring. Camilla had worked tirelessly to redefine her role, focusing on charity work and stepping into the position of queen with dignity. However, the comparisons to Diana never truly faded. Now, with William's statement reigniting public sentiment, Camilla once again found herself facing criticism, as many saw her as an unwelcome figure in the royal narrative. Behind closed doors, palace aides scrambled to contain the situation, but William's stance had been made clear. There was no walking it back. Across the country, Diana's treatment by the monarchy was being re-examined. Her infamous BBC interview, once seen as a defining moment, was now condemned for the deceitful way it had been obtained. However, it was only one chapter in a much larger story, a story of a woman who sought to modernize the monarchy in ways that were not always welcomed at the time. William's actions were not surprising to those who had followed his journey. His mother's influence had never wavered in his life, evident in his commitment to charitable causes and the way he raised his own children. Unlike previous royal generations, he prioritized emotional openness, ensuring that Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis understood the world beyond palace walls. This generational shift in royal dynamics made the moment even more significant. William and Kate had embraced a modern, approachable image, resonating deeply with the public. While Charles had attempted to modernize in his own way, Camilla remained a symbol of an era many were unwilling to forget. Even within palace circles, concerns grew over what this meant for the monarchy's future. William was not just popular, he represented a bridge between tradition and progress, someone who could lead the monarchy into a new era while still honoring its past. However, his growing influence also placed others, particularly Camilla, under intensified scrutiny. As media coverage remained relentless, the palace faced a difficult decision: issue an official response or allow the storm to pass. Every move was being carefully considered, with advisors warning against escalating the situation further. Yet, it was clear that this was not just a fleeting controversy, it was a defining moment that could reshape the monarchy's standing in the public eye. Outside the palace, conversations intensified across the nation about the monarchy's relevance, particularly among younger generations who viewed the institution with increasing skepticism. William's words would not be forgotten anytime soon. And for Camilla, the realization set in: no matter how much time had passed, Diana's presence would always linger, shaping the monarchy's future in ways that could never be undone. The days following Prince William's statement were filled with unease within Buckingham Palace. What began as a single declaration in defense of Princess Diana's legacy quickly escalated into a full-scale crisis. The press was relentless, dissecting every aspect of William's remarks, while social media flooded with messages of support. His words struck a chord not just with those who admired Diana but also with those long skeptical of the monarchy's treatment of her. Inside the palace, the tension was impossible to ignore, as senior aides convened urgent meetings to strategize the next move. Public perception was everything, and they knew that how the royal family responded would determine whether this moment would fade or mark a turning point for the institution. However, there was no easy solution. William's statement had reignited discussions about the past that many within the monarchy had worked tirelessly to move beyond. King Charles found himself caught between his wife, Queen Camilla, who had spent years trying to establish herself within the royal family despite persistent scrutiny, and his son, whose popularity continued to soar as he positioned himself as the heir bringing the monarchy into a new era. Those close to Charles suggested that while he understood why William had spoken out, he was also deeply concerned about the unintended consequences, as the monarchy thrived on stability, and this situation was anything but stable. Camilla, meanwhile, found herself in a difficult position. She had carefully navigated her role as queen consort, avoiding direct comparisons to Diana whenever possible, but now, despite her efforts, she was once again at the center of public discussion, with headlines questioning whether she would ever truly escape Diana's shadow. Inside the palace, some suggested she had taken the backlash harder than she let on. Though she maintained her composure in public, reports indicated that behind closed doors, the weight of the situation was undeniable. William, however, was not surprised by the reaction. He had always known that speaking about his mother would bring back painful memories for many, both inside and outside the royal family. But for him, this was never about controversy, it was about setting the record straight. He had witnessed firsthand the relentless media intrusion into Diana's life and the way she had been manipulated by journalists. Now, as a father himself, he was determined that history would not repeat itself. His younger children, while too young to grasp the full complexities of the situation, were nonetheless growing up in the shadow of this renewed scrutiny. William and Kate had always been intentional about introducing their children to the realities of royal life differently than past generations, emphasizing emotional openness, a reflection of Diana's influence. However, with the world watching, the scrutiny surrounding their family was growing. While public support for William remained strong, the monarchy itself was not immune to criticism. His statement had reignited broader conversations, particularly among younger generations, about the role of the royal family in modern Britain. Polls revealed a growing divide between older and younger citizens, with the latter being less convinced that the monarchy was an essential institution. This shift had been happening gradually, but moments like this accelerated the conversation. Meanwhile, Prince Harry, watching from across the Atlantic, reportedly felt conflicted. Though he had spoken openly about his mother's struggles and had his own criticisms of the monarchy, his relationship with William remained complex. Sources suggested that while he admired William's willingness to speak out, there was also a sense of sadness. Despite their shared commitment to honoring Diana's legacy, their approaches had led them down very different paths. Harry's decision to step away from royal duties had distanced him from the institution, and moments like this only highlighted the divide. Inside Buckingham Palace, senior aides attempted to manage the crisis with careful messaging. The king remained silent, a strategic move to avoid escalating tensions, but behind closed doors, concern was growing. The royal family had faced numerous controversies, yet this moment felt different. It was not just a scandal to be contained, but a fundamental challenge to how the monarchy reconciled its past with its future. For Camilla, the personal toll was undeniable. Her journey from a controversial figure to queen consort had been long and difficult, and she had hoped that the worst of public scrutiny was behind her. Yet Diana's name still carried an emotional power that no other royal figure could match. The comparisons were unavoidable, and once again, they were being discussed on a global scale. Some within the palace believed that, like all media frenzies, this moment would pass, but others were not so sure. The rise of social media had permanently altered the landscape, allowing public opinion to be shaped by more than just traditional media. As debates about the monarchy's role in modern society continued, it became evident that this was not an isolated incident but part of a larger shift. The younger generation of royals, particularly William and Kate, represented a departure from past traditions, engaging more openly with the public and contemporary issues. However, this also meant that conflicts like this would be harder to avoid. In an era where authenticity was demanded, the days of silent endurance within the royal family were numbered. For William, the next steps would be crucial. As the future king, every decision carried weight, and this was no exception. However, he had made his position clear: Diana's legacy was not to be forgotten or rewritten. Regardless of the reactions within the palace, he was prepared to stand by that belief. Despite the royal family's attempts to maintain normalcy, the growing public conversation around Diana's legacy and William's stance made it impossible to ignore the deepening divide within Buckingham Palace. The media amplified every aspect of the situation. Was this a son's rightful defense of his mother's honor, or was it a direct challenge to the monarchy's long-standing way of operating? Behind the scenes, discussions among senior aides grew more strategic. The royal family had weathered many controversies, but this moment felt different. This was not an external scandal, it was a personal reckoning within the monarchy itself. William's words were not only a testament to his loyalty to his mother but also a statement about the future he envisioned for the institution. King Charles found himself in a difficult position, not just as a monarch but as a father and a husband. Reports suggested that he sympathized with William's emotions, as he had witnessed firsthand how Diana had suffered under relentless media scrutiny. However, he also understood that the monarchy thrived on careful diplomacy and maintaining an image of unity despite internal tensions. Queen Camilla, meanwhile, remained under the microscope. She had spent decades working to earn public acceptance, transitioning from being seen as the other woman to a respected royal figure. However, with Diana's enduring influence once again dominating the public conversation, Camilla's place in the royal narrative was being scrutinized anew. Despite years of service and dedication to the crown, the question remained: could she ever truly escape Diana's legacy? William, however, remained unmoved by concerns over how his words might have unsettled those within the palace. He had not spoken out to create controversy but because he genuinely believed it was necessary. In the aftermath of William's statement, discussions surrounding his remarks only intensified rather than fading. What had initially been a defense of Diana's legacy had transformed into a broader conversation about the monarchy's future, its ability to evolve, and whether it could ever truly reconcile with its past. Within Buckingham Palace, the divide between tradition and modernization was becoming increasingly apparent. William's stance was not solely about protecting his mother's memory but also about setting a new precedent for transparency and accountability within the institution. For years, the royal family had maintained a policy of silence in the face of controversy, believing that dignity was best preserved through restraint. However, William had chosen a different approach, one that challenged the long-standing notion that the monarchy should remain detached from public discourse. His contrast with the old guard was undeniable. He and Kate had cultivated a public image rooted in relatability, frequently engaging with people in ways that felt vastly different from the traditional formality of the royal institution. Their focus on mental health advocacy, modern parenting, and community engagement had won them significant support, particularly among younger generations. Yet, this shift did not come without resistance from within the palace. King Charles, having spent decades preparing for his role as monarch, understood the delicate balance required to maintain public favor while upholding royal traditions. Now, faced with his son's growing influence, he encountered a challenge unlike any other, one that no amount of preparation could have anticipated. His leadership was being tested not by external threats but by the evolving dynamics within his own family. While he recognized William's intentions, he also carried the weight of history and the expectations placed upon the monarchy. Meanwhile, Camilla faced a different kind of scrutiny. The renewed attention on Diana had reopened old wounds, and public discussions about the past inevitably led to a re-examination of her role in the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage. Though she had long accepted that Diana's memory would always be present in the public consciousness, this moment felt different. Comparisons between the two women once again dominated headlines, and despite her years of service and dedication to charitable causes, she found herself confined to a narrative she had worked tirelessly to move beyond. However, for William, this was never about Camilla. His focus remained steadfast on his mother's legacy and ensuring that the mistakes of the past were acknowledged. His frustration with the media's treatment of Diana had never waned, and with the truth about how she had been deceived coming to light, he was unwilling to remain silent. The ethical breaches surrounding her infamous interview had only reinforced his belief that Diana had been isolated, manipulated, and ultimately failed by those who should have protected her. Meanwhile, the monarchy's relationship with the public was shifting. While support for the institution remained strong among older generations, younger people were becoming increasingly indifferent. Many questioned whether the monarchy still held relevance in a modern society that prioritized accountability and transparency over tradition and hierarchy. William's decision to speak out resonated with those who believed that, for the monarchy to survive, it needed to evolve. From across the Atlantic, Prince Harry observed the unfolding events with his own perspective. He had long voiced concerns about the media's treatment of his mother and the institution's failure to support her. While he and William had taken different paths, their shared grief over Diana's loss remained a common bond. However, their differing approaches to royal life were now starkly evident. Harry had chosen to leave the institution, while William was actively working to change it from within. Inside Buckingham Palace, senior advisors debated how to respond. Some believed that issuing a statement acknowledging William's concerns could help ease tensions, while others warned that any official response might only fuel the controversy. Historically, the royal family had adhered to the philosophy of never complain, never explain, but in an era of instant media coverage and social media activism, silence was no longer a foolproof strategy. As discussions continued behind closed doors, the public discourse showed no signs of slowing. Polls reflected a growing divide. While support for William remained high, opinions on the monarchy as an institution were becoming increasingly polarized. Public opinion on William's statement remained polarized. Some saw it as a necessary turning point that could push the monarchy toward much-needed reform, while others viewed it as a sign of growing instability, questioning whether the royal family could endure yet another period of intense scrutiny. One thing, however, was undeniable: Diana's influence had not diminished. Decades after her passing, she remained a central figure in the monarchy's evolving narrative. Her legacy was not just about her charitable work or her role as the people's princess. It was about the way she had challenged the status quo, bringing warmth and humanity to an institution long perceived as distant. William had inherited more than just her name. He had inherited her determination to ensure history did not repeat itself. The real question now was whether the royal family would adapt to these changes or resist them. William had made his position clear: he would not allow the past to be rewritten or forgotten. However, the monarchy as an institution was built on continuity, operating on the belief that it could withstand any storm without fundamentally changing. This was now the true test it faced. For the time being, Buckingham Palace remained silent, watching and waiting as the impact of William's statement continued to unfold. Yet, this was not an issue that would simply disappear. The debates about Diana's legacy, the role of the media, and the future of the monarchy were only just beginning. As Britain's royal family looked ahead, they faced an unavoidable reality: change was no longer just a possibility, it was a necessity. The weight of William's statement continued to shape conversations about both the past and the future of the monarchy. While Buckingham Palace had not issued an official response, insiders suggested that the royal family was acutely aware of the broader implications. This was no longer just about the BBC's unethical practices, it was about the monarchy's role in shaping and controlling its own narrative. For many, it was clear that the institution stood at a crossroads. Public support for William remained strong, but with it came expectations. People saw him as the future of the monarchy, someone who could modernize the institution without compromising its legacy. His willingness to speak out about Diana's mistreatment resonated with those who had long believed that the monarchy needed to evolve to survive in an era of increasing public accountability. Yet, with that support came added pressure: could William truly modernize the monarchy, or was he bound by the very traditions he seemed willing to challenge? For King Charles, the situation was becoming increasingly delicate. As monarch, his priority was stability, ensuring that the royal family remained a symbol of continuity rather than division. But as a father, he understood that his son's words carried deep emotional weight. Charles had spent decades working to rebuild public trust, particularly after Diana's passing and his subsequent marriage to Camilla. Though he had largely succeeded in repositioning himself as a stable, responsible leader, William's statements had inadvertently reopened wounds that had taken years to heal. The resurgence of Diana's influence in public discourse also meant renewed scrutiny on Camilla. Despite her years of dedication to royal duties, there were still those who viewed her as forever linked to the past scandals of the royal family. Reports suggested that while she maintained a composed public front, the renewed attention had been unsettling. The idea that, even in death, Diana's legacy could overshadow her own contributions was something Camilla had long accepted. However, This moment served as a reminder that history's memory was long and unrelenting. Meanwhile, the broader conversation about the monarchy's future was gaining momentum. Polls reflected a growing generational divide. While older citizens continued to express strong support for the monarchy, younger demographics were increasingly questioning its relevance. Many younger people did not feel the same emotional connection to the institution, and moments like this only fueled ongoing debates about whether the monarchy could keep pace with modern values. This wasn't just about one speech, it was about what the monarchy represented in an era of political and social change. William, however, appeared unfazed by the controversy. Those close to him suggested that he had no regrets about his statement. For him, this was not about challenging the monarchy, it was about protecting his mother's truth and ensuring that her story was not rewritten to fit a more convenient narrative. He had always been fiercely protective of Diana's legacy, and now that the truth about the circumstances of her famous interview had been exposed, he was determined to ensure that the lessons of the past were not forgotten. His relationship with his father remained complex. While there was no outright conflict, insiders suggested that an unspoken tension existed between the two. Charles had always been more reserved in the face of public controversy, favoring diplomacy and strategic silence over direct confrontation. William, on the other hand, was proving himself to be a different kind of future monarch, one who was unafraid to address difficult issues head-on, even if it made those within his own institution uncomfortable. For Prince Harry, watching the developments unfold from the United States, the moment carried particular significance. Though he and William had taken different paths, their shared grief over Diana's death remained a common bond. However, their approaches to addressing the monarchy's shortcomings had diverged sharply. Harry had chosen to leave the institution entirely, while William was working to reform it from within. The question now was whether their different approaches would ever allow them to find common ground again.